if somebody actually wants change, wants to actually alter those issues, they're going to vote for me. We need to be building up and fortifying our democratic institutions. That's not what the Constitution was written for. It was written for the times when it's inconvenient.
Welcome to the Curators Podcast, a place for the Kennedy curious.
Good day, everyone. This is Paul with the Curators Podcast. I have with me my co-host Johnny and our special guest Jim Gale with us today. We are the curators for the Kennedy Curious. We are the non-programmable, and we are the ones who seek truth and a better world for ourselves and our neighbors. Jim, when Johnny told me that you would be joining us, I was thrilled, and I'm really glad you're with us today. Just to let everyone know, if in case those who don't, Jim is the founder of Food Forest Abundance and of the Earth Council. He has a lot going on. He's standing in the middle of one of his wonderful creations, and I asked him if he would spend a moment to get us started, giving us a little tour. So Jim, take it away.
All right. Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Johnny, as always. So I'm living in St. Cloud, Florida, in a completely off-grid community. We produce all of our own food, water, and energy. So here's a cherry. I'm not sure if you like cherries, but they're absolutely delicious. Here's some mulberries, right? We have bananas and avocados and grapes and peaches and plums and apples and raspberries and blueberries and blackberries and sugarcane and turmeric and moringa and lychee and longan and strawberry fruit. Everything that you could probably name here. Now, this could be a lawn, right? If this was a standard development, a normal development in our world today, this would be a lawn. And a lot of people out there will spray things like Roundup on their lawns periodically to kill what they call weeds. Well, in our system, we don't spray any poisons or any chemicals. And instead of having grass, we have perennial peanut. See these little yellow flowers? They're also edible. And you don't need to mow it because this is as tall as it gets. And here's the best part. This plant is not only more beautiful and more functional than lawn, and you don't have to mow it, but it also adds as an earth living Band-Aid. So this is a scar on the earth. The earth should never be exposed to the sun and the wind and the rain. And we are learning a lot as we build this Garden of Eden ecosystem. So what's happening is the perennial peanut is vining out and it's covering and healing the scar. And it's also a nitrogen fixer. It's a soil builder. So we have perennial peanut as our base ground cover. And we have no weeds in our garden. Weeds are GMOs. They're modified plants that do not fit in a normal natural ecosystem. Do we have some plants that are competitors that might take a little bit of energy from the other plants? Yes, we do. But through the diversity of plants that we have in our system, those competitors do not take. We don't have invasive species that are harming the rest of the plants. Those terms, like invasive, they're often used as marketing tools for the sales of poisons and things that are killing our world, our stomachs, our aquifers, and everything else. So, Paul and Johnny, that's what we're all about, is demonstrating the solution, living completely off-grid. And by the way, I'm not a farmer. I don't want to be a farmer. I appreciate and love farmers because they work so hard. I don't want to work that hard for my food. I want to simply be able to walk outside and in 10 minutes, I can have a basket of food that can feed my whole family. Yes.
And how long did it take you to get to where you are?
Oh, I'm so glad you asked, Paul. So 2 years ago, this was sand. It was Florida sugar sand. Now, a lot of folks in different parts of the world and the United States are saying, well, we can't grow those plants in Minnesota or Arizona. Well, that's true, but what you can grow is thousands of edible species of plants in your zone. And that's what the whole permaculture design process has figured out is what plants grow in your zone and then to stack in the guilds and the communities of plants that support each other in a way that's incredibly low maintenance and exponentially productive.
That's amazing. And Johnny, we were talking about this on a prior podcast and how the ultimate expression of people power and people reclaiming power for themselves is the ability to take back their own food and their own food supply and grow their own food, as opposed to being poisoned by the chemicals and the toxic pesticides in our food supply today, which are literally killing us at an earlier age. This is an extraordinarily serious issue, uh, mostly unique to America. And I know you know about that. So uh, why don't you share some thoughts?
Yeah, it's wild, isn't it?
Mm,
40 years ago, we were living, just as long as our European friends. Now we're living 5 and 6 years less than them. And what's changed?
that's
What's the
astounding.
difference?
Hold
Isn't
on a
that?
second, folks. I just want to make a point here. Try to grasp what Johnny just said. We have gone from having the same lifespans as our European friends to living 5 years shorter than they are.
Right. And just
Something
imagine
is going on.
that's everyone we love, right? That's our mothers, our fathers, our sons and daughters. And it's not just the lousy 5 years at the end. It's like, how much what we're capable of right now. How good can we feel right now? And so they're taking us out at the knees. And yeah, what's the difference? Well, there's 1,000 chemicals that are allowed in our food that are not allowed in Europe. And
Hmm.
that's a big difference. Principally, the glyphosate, I think, is the main culprit. It's in 95% of our food. It's an antibiotic, a carcinogen, an endocrine disruptor, and it chelates our nutrients. And just like Jim was talking about, there is, these GMOs that we're up against. A lot of these GMOs are made to work with this glyphosate. So what Jim's doing there, doing things the right way, he's getting back to what's natural, what's in our blood, across all our cultures, across millennia. This is what we've been up to. This is what we've been doing. And so he's tapping into that wisdom from antiquity that we've forgotten. And yeah, I'm really appreciative of everybody in this movement because yeah, it's so important. We've got 70 and 80% less pollinators now. We don't have the birds we should, and yeah, it's incredible. So for all of us, we need to do the right thing and sow abundance responsibly, and support those who do. And here we're now into the heart of spring. It's a great time to remember that. Plant a tree. I like the idea when we plant the trees, we support whole ecologies. The birds and the bees can come naturally. And yeah, I've had the pleasure of going and visiting Galt's Landing out there with Jim, and yeah, it's just incredible what he's got going on. So yeah, Jim, you got the mulberries coming in, you got the perennial peanut, you got all the bananas, and yeah, it's incredible. He's also got different animals going there. You got some cows going now, Jim, don't you?
Yes,
All
we
right.
have cows and chickens and ducks and turkeys and fish and bees. And my friends, I am not an expert in any of those animals. And yet, here they are. And they're doing great. We had an infestation of flies about a year ago because we had, a year and a half ago, because we had some flooding. And then after the flooding, somehow there was a harvest or a release of flies. And what did we do? We went and got some ivermectin. And now we're putting in plants and other Joel Salatin's techniques. If you haven't heard of Joel Salatin and Polyface Farms, he came here a couple months back
Hmm.
and he showed us what we're doing wrong with our cattle pasture. And simply by adding chickens into the field 3 days after the cows come through, we reduce the fly larva massively. So my point is the solutions to all of the world's biggest problems, mass extinction, deforestation, cancer, diabetes, heart disease, and even tyranny, all of the solutions can be found within our natural system.
There's abundance in nature. We had a guest on a couple of weeks ago, Karen Laurie, who is a close friend of Bobby Kennedy for over 30 years, and she was talking about Joel and Polyface Farms. So I think she knows him as well. And this is the solution. You know, people are you talk about mass extinction. You know how you know the term I heard from Callie Means was genocide being perpetuated for the sake of corporate profit growth. So their costs get reduced. The more glyphosate they spread on the crops, the more chemicals they put to reduce their costs to a bare minimum, or whatever methods they use to harvest their food, right? So uh, you know, they're making more money, and we're paying for it with our health and with years of our lives. And that's the conclusion I've come to. And the evidence is in what Johnny was saying before about the fact that, you know, we allow 10 times the amount of glyphosate that any other country does, or almost any other country, right, Johnny? And there are 1,000 ingredients in our food that are outlawed in Europe that we're consuming every day.
Yep.
I mean, can you
Yeah, it's
imagine
go ahead.
just the I mean, the food on our plates, some of these chemicals aren't allowed in the country at all. So it's just wild.
And
It's
it's not just the fast food guys. You know, I personally am finding it harder and harder to trust any restaurant that I go to. Places that you would normally think are, you know, healthy. So I'm trying to eat organic whenever, wherever I can, and I'm encouraging my sons to do the same. They're a little sick of hearing me, but I continue to badger them, right? Um, but this is a very serious issue. And you had a visit from Bobby Kennedy, Jim.
yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
I met him in Savannah at a CHD conference. And we were in a back room before he spoke for about 15, 20 minutes. And I shared with him, I said this, I said, Bobby, I've got, I have a campaign strategy that will not only win the election, but it will inspire and catalyze a shift in awareness that leads to mass adoption and change the world. And then I laid it out for him. I had these 4 images along with some writings. I said, if you focus on putting food forests, make a big claim. The big claim is I'm going to take all the poisons out of the school lunches and school land, and the students are going to grow some of their own food on the school grounds, right? As a result of this, childhood diabetes and cancer and depression and suicide would be greatly reduced.
Hmm.
If this is the only thing that came about of your campaign and your presidency, it would change the world.
Hmm.
And he agreed. I then shared another campaign stop at a prison. We are going to take the poisons out of the prison lunches and meals and land, and the inmates are going to grow some of their own food. As a result of this, recidivism would be cut in half.
Hmm.
Now, here's the best part. These are not hypothetical solutions. They've been done. And every time they're done, they result in epic transformation of people. One study in California showed not only did taxpayers save $40 million because the prisoners grew their own food, but the recidivism rate fell by way more than 60%.
Hmm.
So that's 2 campaign stops. And here's the third. And I used the Florida governor here as an example. The annual budget in Florida is over $100 billion, and about 50% of that go to things that could be solved for 5% of that, right? The health and wellness and well-being of the citizens of Florida. 5% of $100 billion over 4 years is $20 billion. That would equate to 20,000 $1 million food forest installations in the state of Florida over 4 years. That's every school, that's every ghetto, that's every opportunity zone, that's every city park, that's every prison. That would create food self reliance and beauty and abundance and habitat for the birds and the bees, and it would change the state. Therefore, the same strategy could change the United States. And the fourth campaign strategy that I suggested would be to elevate the narrative above picking sides for war and to focus on the actual solutions. If we turned our army bases around the world into food forest demonstration sites, And we put our money, a fraction of the money that's currently being spent on missiles and weapons, into putting food forests and helping those local communities grow food. The goodwill and abundance that would come to us for helping to initiate and create that process would lead to the collapse of the military industrial complex, because it is fear and scarcity that drives the war narrative. And peace is the only solution to war. Abundance is the only solution to bring peace.
Well, I am absolutely blown away by your perspective, Jim, and your solution mindset. There's a little out of the box thinking, but not a lot. It's very practical. The solutions are there. They're available to us. It's a matter of having the political will. Isn't that really what it takes? And I think for me personally, that's where Bobby Kennedy comes in, and kind of undoing this whole economic model that's based on sickness over wellness, but turning it around and basing it on wellness and enriching the lives of others. Uh, that's what enriches our lives, not taking from them and trading off and playing that shell game, but rather, doing what you're doing, taking a square mile of, or however, whatever size your property is, of what was nothing 2 years ago, and converting it. I mean, it's amazing what nature offers us. It really is. It's incredible.
It's exponential, right?
Yeah.
You can count the seeds in an apple, but you cannot count the apples in a single seed, right? This food forest has already led to the propagation of hundreds and very soon thousands of plants. And it's only 1 acre, right? And 2 years ago, it was nothing. So when I read Bill Mollison's quote about 17 years ago, I started to sob. His quote, his concept: though the problems of our world are increasingly complex, the solutions remain embarrassingly simple when we take the poisons out and we grow food instead of lawns. And that's what I love so much about Bobby's campaign strategy. Let's take the poisons out. If that's all we did, we would change mass extinction around the world.
Are you familiar with the San Padrignano model in Italy that Bobby refers to for people with addiction and who are experiencing addiction and recovery, and how they learn to they go into a community where they learn to grow their own food and they learn a craft, and they put down the cell phones, and they give them a 4-year commitment. I'm not sure the exact time frame, but they come out, like you said, with a much greater chance of a future for themselves, and the success rate is astounding. And my understanding is that aligns with what you described before, with prisons and even with schools, and how we can empower people towards self-actualization, and produce a healthier society, where again, what we're talking about is harnessing this to a greater sense of community, and not where, I'm deriving benefit because I'm taking from you. That
Yes.
can't be the source of a long-standing society, right?
Right. And the beauty is that the infrastructure for what I'm talking about already exists. We just have to create awareness around how to use that existing infrastructure in a way that serves us exponentially. Because right now, a lot of these pillars of our society, the health care system, which is failing, right? The monetary system, which has failed. All of these structures and pillars can be just tweaked, and we take the poisons out and we start using our resources in a regenerative way. And it's the most selfish thing we could ever do. To those billionaires and the wealthy out there listening, get a hold of us. We have the solution, the online marketplace being stood up right now. And we have an Earth Council of the most viable and proven solution providers in the world that are standing this up together, 12 of us. And I'd like to share with you a little bit about who they are and why, to help people see the value of this.
Please do.
Yeah, I know you got Joel Salatin's one of them. Is that right, Jim?
That's right. Joel Salatin, who has, if you haven't seen his TED Talk, he absolutely turns the carbon narrative upside down with regards to growing cattle. He builds soil, and his cattle are way more nutrient dense than the cattle you buy that are raised with poisonous food, right? So he's actually putting carbon into the soil. It's the ultimate carbon fixation plan, is to use animals in their natural way with biomimicry, right? So when we have 50,000 new small cattle farmers with maybe 5 or 6 head of cattle around their local little communities and parks, now we just decentralized that major piece of the food supply chain. And it's logical and profitable on every level to do this, right? That's one of our council members. Another one is Lisa Mollison. Lisa and Bill is known as the father of permaculture. And he created this science that starts with the ethics of earth care, people care, and reinvesting our surplus to earth care and people care. She is the steward of the Permaculture Institute's vast library of knowledge, which literally has within it the solution to all the world's biggest problems. And Theo Fleury, he was a Olympic gold medalist. He led his team to the Olympic gold and then led another 6 teams to the Stanley Cup gold. And he suffered great trauma as he was raped as a young player. And he is now one of the world's foremost speakers on trauma as being the root cause of all human suffering. It's absolutely incredible. He is our trauma expert. And Pat Miletich and Doc Will Spencer. Pat Miletich was a 5-time UFC world champion, the toughest man in the world, who then trained a dozen other world champions. And he is now a soil savior. And he brought to the team Doc Will Spencer. And this cannot be understated. Doc Will Spencer has studied the great soil regenerators of our time, and using a combination of biodynamics and living organisms, he has a product with 1,300 different living organisms that can literally eat the heavy metals and the poisons that are sprayed in our water and on our land and in our guts. And it can digest them and turn them into bioavailable fatty acids. This is an absolutely huge solution. So those are 4 of our council members, and we have 8, and they're equally epic. So we're coming together and we're following Martin Luther King's advice. Those who love peace must learn to organize as well as effectively as those who love war. That's what we're doing.
Wow. And there you go again with the solutions, Jim. How dare you?
It's fun.
Yes, and that is astounding information. Now, are those gentlemen, are those people you mentioned part of the Earth Council?
Yes. We have
Uh-huh.
12 members, and they
Okay.
are part of it. And then we've got bee solutions. We've got longevity and healing solutions. The Bloomberg Healing Technology of the Year, John Baxter, he's with us. And Marjorie Wildcraft, one of the world's leading women in regenerative agriculture. She has class after class on teaching people how to turn their yards into productive growth spaces. It's phenomenal.
Well, we have. I want to let Johnny come in here in a second, but we're focusing on the industrial complex world. And you mentioned one. We're talking about in our curators podcast, the military industrial complex, the monetary, which is the system with the Fed and the government and the debt and the deficits, right? The medical industrial complex, the media industrial complex, the food and agriculture industrial complex, and then the educational industrial complex. So we've identified 6 major ones, all of which have strip mined the people for their own gain, and not and it's happened over a period of decades. Jim, it didn't start out that way. I think post World War II, it was about making the community richer, but as will happen when you're a superpower and you become the world's reserve currency, and then greed starts to set in, and imperialism, and this sense of entitlement, and deficits don't matter, and we can go on and on and on, right? All of a sudden now we find ourselves in a very untenable position. There is no way we can get through this without some major sacrifice. But if sacrifice means finding our way through your solutions, then that is a sacrifice worth making, right? Where we take the power back from Wall Street and we bring it back to Main Street. That's what's happening here.
Yes. And there's no sacrifice in a system of abundance. Everybody wins, except for maybe the entity that controls the whole thing, that
Right.
controls the government, and is basically the computer at BlackRock, Aladdin, which makes all the financial bets. And through their conglomerate of State Street and Vanguard and all of the corporations that are associated and putting their money through this system, we need to turn BlackRock green again, because BlackRock seems to be the intention as well as the name.
Interesting. An appropriate moniker.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's wild. I loved your idea of all these military bases around the world, turning them into models of sustainability, of abundance, and getting that going there. You know, it's yeah, I love the libertarian idea of government, that it needs to be just big enough to protect one from the other, and you know, it's just out of control what's going on. And if it is there, to the extent it is there, it needs to be, you know, helping us and serving us, and that's what it's gotten away from. And yeah, everything you're doing there, Jim. I wanted to ask you. You guys are in so many countries. I know, helping people sow abundance everywhere. I wanted to give you a chance to share about that a little bit.
Yeah, so our entity, we have an entity called foodforestabundance.com. We design and install food forests, edible landscapes all over the world. And we have an incredible team of designers, permaculture certified designers, that know how to take any space and turn it into the most productive space that it could be. So that's what we're all about. And then the Earth Council becomes the steward of the designers. And so we add in all the elements of the Earth Council, the products and services that they have proven. And this is, well, Victor Hugo said it best. He's 200 years ago. He said, there's one thing stronger than all of the armies of the world, and that is an idea whose time has come. Nature, God, using our resources wisely, coming together is the idea whose time has come.
I love it. Yeah, that's a great quote, isn't it? Yeah, and we are at a tipping point right now for so many reasons. You know, you talk about the toxicity in our food. We're on track. I just can't believe this stat. We're going to be spending $1 trillion just on our children with autism here in this country by the year 2030. That's incredible. You know, that's going to devastate the economy, let alone the human toll from that. And nobody's talking about that. And that's what, you know, you're talking about here today is that solution of getting back to making the food safe again,
Yes.
making it locally.
Yeah, and Johnny, and getting to the root causes of these chronic diseases and the explosion of them, right? The explosion in childhood diabetes and pre-diabetes, the explosion in autism, in myocarditis, in cancer, in ADD and ADHD, and all of these chronic diseases that are just really going off the charts. And this is a fairly recent phenomenon. And what Bobby Kennedy is committed to doing is turning the agencies around toward finding solutions and not being captured by the entities who are incentivized to continue that trend for their own personal agenda, right?
Yep.
So this is about putting the people first, and you know, we can sit here as a nation and choose to ignore what's going on and think that one of the two major parties are prepared to do anything about this. Well, folks, I'm here to tell you, I don't care if you're Democrat or Republican. I don't know what Johnny is. I don't know what Jim is. I don't want to know. I know they're on my side because they care about solutions. And this is an existential crisis. So we need to stop with the tribalism. You know, I tell people, if you want to pick fights with the other side, go play Rock'em Sock'em Robots, Jim.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Go find that red and blue and try to knock each other's block off. But when you want to solve problems, all right, and keep our nation from going off the cliff, this is the way to do it. This is the independent, common ground, solution-based platform of Bobby Kennedy.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, inspiring mass adoption. So what I've been obsessed with this question for really 17 years since I woke up to what's actually happening in the world. And I learned permaculture and I had my first two daughters. And that gave me such an incredible motivation to figure out the solutions. So what else is needed? Well, we need to engage the influencers. So our Earth Council are incredible
Love
influencers
that.
in their own rights. Well, we're one phone call away from the biggest names in influence, Tucker Carlson and Joe Rogan and Tony Robbins. So imagine now that we inspire the influencers to join us in the messaging, in the promotion of the simplest thing we could ever do. Let's take the poisons out and use our resources wisely. We're not of the belief that I can affect BlackRock from the top down. But what I know for certain is we can inspire the individuals working at that entity to do what's right. And then from within these systems of enslavement, the ones that JFK was talking about when he said we are surrounded by a ruthless and monolithic conspiracy that has conscripted vast wealth and resources in all areas of government. And that's what I'm talking about. We affect and inspire from within, and then these institutions either evolve and start joining us, or they collapse.
Hmm. Pollution comes in many different forms, and it always enriches somebody at the expense of the ones being polluted,
Yes,
right?
that's exactly
Johnny,
right.
you've been spending a ton of time on spreading this message around the country. You're such an important part of our grassroots movement, and just everyone who knows Johnny just wants to kind of take his message with them throughout the day. I know I do. So Johnny, I'm going to ask you to just spend a moment and tell us a little bit about Plant Paradise.
Well, I tell you, it's like Jim was saying there. He's working on it there. He's got his little Garden of Eden going, and yeah, just getting back to that, And this is something that it really comes so natural to us, something that we've been doing for thousands of years. It's in our blood, and yeah, our favorite plants and animals. Look, he's got them all there. He's got a collection going. He's starting a zoo. The chickens, the turkeys,
Hmm.
the bees, you name it, and our favorite plants and animals providing everything we need in a harmony. They can come together. There's a perfect cycle, like Jim's talking about there. Building the soil together. When the Europeans came to the Americas, there was the Great Plains had so many feet of great topsoil. It was incredible, and that was created in part due to the 100 million bison that were roaming those plains around and around. And so when we get back to, I love one thing that Joel Salatin says. He says every restaurant should have some chickens in the back that are feeding all those kitchen scraps too. Now you're taking that liability of that waste product, and you're creating eggs out of that are some of the most nutritious, healthy eggs that you can find in this country right now. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's just really ticks all the boxes. I wanted to go back to when you're making it locally as well, you create a resilience in your local communities. Jim was talking about the answer for tyranny, and we do see just more and more just wild proposals being put out there by people that have some influence, and they want to take our livelihoods away, our way of life that we've had, going back forever. Raising cattle in a lot of cultures, and they want to say, well, we got to take that from you now because we're going to fix the weather. And it's just absurd, a lot of these proposals. And, like I mentioned, like Jim's talking about, this is actually the number one way you can actually sequester carbon. So to the degree that carbon's really an issue at all, this is how you do it. You stop you don't need so much of this huge system shipping food all over the world and doing it in industrial ways that are destroying the topsoil, putting that up into the atmosphere. We can do these in ways that are beautiful and give us local self-reliance. They give us that sovereignty so that we can say no to some of this tyranny, and they prepare us for other challenges, come what may. We saw from COVID, we saw food shortages, and COVID was nothing compared to some of the bigger challenges we could face. So, this really ticks all the boxes, like Jim was saying. So.
It does. And I want to shine a light on the simplicity of what I'm talking about, because A lot of people say, I don't want to be a farmer. I don't have the time, the knowledge, the money. You don't need any of those things except for a little bit of time and a little bit of desire, right? So I'll give you an example that is right in front of me. This mulberry tree, we put this in the ground and it was maybe 5, 6 feet tall and it was about as thick as my thumb, right? 2 years later, it's producing an incredible amount. My daughter and I come out here sometimes twice a day and we pick mulberries and we have a blast. She's 4 years old and we call it treasure hunting for nature's candy, right? So this mulberry, we've done nothing to maintain this mulberry except for we put in irrigation at the very beginning and it's on a timer. So as far as our energy input, after the original design and installation, this system is never needs another bit of influence. Now, if we want to get a better yield from some of the trees, we might do some pruning. But even if we don't do anything, this system, we could leave it for 30 years and come back, and it would not only be a jungle of food, which would serve virtually limitless animals and life, but it would spread for hundreds of miles because the wind, the rain, the animals, the birds would come in and eat seeds and fly on the other side of the lake. And now you've got a new mulberry growing over there.
That's so
Jim,
great. You know,
with
and mulberries.
yeah,
Yeah. Go ahead, Paul.
I was just no, I want you to talk, Johnny. I'll just say that as a guy with some old venture capital roots, I have to say that venture capitalists can only dream of that kind of return on investment, right?
That's right.
Yeah,
That's right.
yeah,
You know, that's exactly what I wanted to speak to. You know, you talk about pruning that mulberry tree, and mulberries, like a lot of other trees, are really great for taking those cuttings from and starting some new ones. So you talk about, you know, your 4-year-old daughter. It won't be long before she can be a part of helping that nursery. You know, my nephews are about 8 years old now, and yeah, you know, they got a little kind of nursery going, and how empowering is that for people just to play in the garden and to create something of real value. You know, and I go back to the idea of, you know, I kind of got into this by way of wanting to be a doctor and getting into healthcare. And that came to me because I was kind of burnt out on doing software and I wanted to do something that had a real impact, that really helped people. And so I started towards being a paramedic, and I realized, you know, they're spending most of their time helping people who are, you know, past the point of helping them, who are having heart attacks, who are, you know, grossly overweight. You know, our food is taking them out. And so we can help people a lot more than most doctors get to by, you know, getting that poison out of our food. You know, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. So, you know, this is so impactful, what Jim is doing there. And yeah, just to replace those calories with quality ones. You know, how powerful is that? You know, I like the idea that anybody who's growing safe food and contributing to this cause, they really are doing more than most doctors, more good for people's health than most doctors get to in this country. And yeah, we should have. I think there should be a little university handing out degrees to call these people doctors, because that is what they're doing. They're really, you know, empowering people to take their health back. And yeah, that's so important for us right now. You know, if we don't have that, you know, what else do we have?
returning to a model of wellness. I want to share this quote here, guys. I'm going to put it up on the screen. Can you see that?
Yep.
Creation is like a mosaic, and every creature has its part in it. When we remove those threads or chip away at the tiles, the mosaic begins to tatter, and it loses its color, its richness. And that's what we're doing to ourselves today. We're destroying our capacity to imagine, to commune with our Creator. It's not just a crime, it's a sin against ourselves and our children. That's a quote from the candidate Robert Kennedy Jr. And you know, it's it really helps to me to support a candidate who identifies with this and who carries that set of principles that seems to be missing from the political discourse today, which is mostly about power and pitting one side against another and tribalism and fear and instilling fear and propaganda and all of that. We can do better. We have to do better, you know. And I heard you mention. I just want to go back, Jim, to Theo Fleury because I'm a big hockey fan and I remember the name and I remember him with the Flames and always wanting to throw something at the TV when he was playing against the Islanders. And then he played for the Rangers too. I did not know about his history like you described, and so that fascinates me. And I would love to meet him one day, and I hope I get the chance. Yeah,
Well, I
that's
would be happy to make an introduction.
I've shared on this podcast. I have a trauma-based history myself,
Yeah.
and it's been an amazing journey. I'm 65 now, so it took me many years to get to where I am with trauma and actually begin to view it as an asset, as a pathway to something more meaningful in my life, as opposed to what many people experience consciously or unconsciously is the effects of trauma and the debilitating effects that it can have. And so it can be a real hindrance and cause other symptoms, from depression to obesity to just mental issues generally. And so there's a lot there with trauma that I think should be talked about, and it
Yes.
is being talked about. We're hearing more and more about the impact of trauma on our society because people experience it in different ways. Everyone is different, you
Yeah.
know, and some people respond better to it than others. Bobby Kennedy, he suffered trauma when his uncle was killed, when his father was killed, double trauma. Went down a path of discovery, we'll call it, right, for 15 years or so,
Yep.
and then began his recovery journey and emerged stronger than ever from it. It's an amazing, I'm going to call it a majestic experience that we should all just put up and say this is the kind of man who can really lead our nation,
Yeah.
because of that experience.
Yep.
So
Yep.
yeah.
Trauma is the root cause of all human suffering. When he told me that, I almost fell off my chair. Again, I've been studying this, but he understands it at such a deep level and how to communicate it. And he is working with networks of people to bring the model. And here's what he shared with me, and this is for everybody. He said the best way to resolve trauma is small group therapy. Get in a group and talk about it. That's why the
Hmm.
AA model has worked so well. So
Hmm.
if anybody out there is suffering from depression or any other type of trauma, then get in a group and share your message and your thoughts and your feelings with people. And that will help you alleviate the suffering.
We're as sick as our secrets, Jim.
Yes.
And we get it out there, and we find out that we're not alone. That whatever we think we're experiencing, somebody else is too, or
Yeah.
perhaps even worse. And then what we find is we tap into a deeper nature within ourselves,
Yeah.
and not how we're being affected, but that we can actually help somebody else because we've been there, we've done it, we've been through it.
Yeah.
And that experience of bringing our own trauma into helping somebody else is, that's the way to transcend human suffering.
It sure is.
Yeah,
It,
yeah.
it, and we bring it all together and we create a new community, a parallel economy that makes the current economy obsolete, an economy of voluntarism, an economy where we recognize that the best way to use our resources is not to invest in the fake or in the destructive, but to invest in the real. The most selfish thing I could do with my abundance is to help myself and my family and my community be self reliant and healthy and grow food because we are experiencing a food supply chain collapse.
Hmm.
And it's very possible with all of the scary stuff out there, the EMPs or this or that or the other thing, that the system fails. And when it does, if it does, then food is going to be a big deal. So the best thing I can do is help all my neighbors grow food. In fact, I gave a guy, he came August of 2022. His name was Mike with Dro TV. And I gave him a sprig of sweet potatoes. It was a vine with a few leaves on it, about 18 inches, 20 inches long. He came back a year and a half later. He had 100 pounds of sweet potatoes. But here's the best part: 25 of his friends are now growing sweet potatoes as well.
Yeah, sweet potatoes. That's another great example of the abundance mindset that you can have when you're in the garden. I was going to chime in about the mulberries, earlier. It's just it's just tremendous. I bet there have been thousands of plants started from your property there, Jim. I'm sure of it because all the cuttings, every time you prune, it's just such an opportunity to spread the abundance. And what a great gift that is to pass along to others.
And every time people come, they leave with plants who want to, right? If they're flying, maybe they don't. But people leave here with armfuls of longevity spinach and Okinawa spinach and mulberry cuttings and Mexican sunflower and yucca and whatever else, because that's our mission. Let's change the world. Here's exactly how: by demonstrating the solution, by being the change and providing a yield and abundance. And by the way, to all the venture capitalists listening, or anybody out there, we want to help you turn some of your fiat, right? Fiat is in rapid decay relative to real. It's
well said.
What do we do? It's like shit. What do we do with shit? We compost it. So we want to help you turn your fiat into abundance.
That's an amazing concept. And I'm not sure venture capitalists and Wall Streeters are ready to hear that message yet, Jim. I'm sure there are a few who will, but one way or another, that message will penetrate into Wall Street, and it makes a lot of sense to me. I'm guessing that you don't have too many pesticides or glyphosate on your property there.
We have no poisons or toxins anywhere on our property, no heavy metals, none of that insanity. It simply doesn't work. It's a killer, and we like life over death.
I think Jonny will join me in saying that you are a hero of the community, and you're enjoying yourself, and you're helping others build a future. So that sounds like something we all owe you a debt of gratitude for. I've been scrolling your website, Food Forest Abundance, and the Earth Council is earthcouncil.org. Is that right?
It's actually, we're getting this all situated now. We're going to be launching in about 30 days. We'll have a PPM ready, or a little, maybe 2 weeks, and then we'll have a fully
private placement memorandum.
That's right.
Yes.
Yep. And then we'll have everything else up and running within about 60 days.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, we hope to be able to, at the Curators, spread the good word, because whatever political climate is out there, that we're just going to put that aside for a second and say, this is the kind of message that we want to, convey to people and spread the word on. So having you on this podcast has been a real treat for me and for our audience. Jonny, do you have anything to conclude with?
Yeah, I just want to thank Jim for coming. It's been great. And let's feed the bunnies and water the flowers, and plant food forests everywhere. Amen, brother.
Yes.
Okay. Happy pollinating,
Thank you, guys.
Jim.
It's
Thank you
beautiful.
so much.
I want to, by the way, invite anybody who wants to come visit me. We have Airbnbs. We're on a private 400-acre lake where we've got the only dock on the lake. There's a mile-long paved runway to our east. World leaders will be coming in here to learn about freedom, but you're invited. The website is galtslanding.farm. So GALTS landing.farm. And you can come stay in our Airbnbs and experience it feels really good here.
Yeah, it's really tremendous. Yeah, I just missed getting to meet Joel Salatin by a few days when I came. So what a great spot to be.
Yeah.
Awesome.
That's awesome.
Thank you, guys.
Okay. Thank you.